Hello, former Crusaders, and welcome to episode 2 of the Decades of Action. This is the 1990s. My name is Sean Wasserkrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. We're one episode down, and we move on to the 90s, which we said in the last episode of the 80s. If the 80s was hard, the 90s was just torturous for us. Knocking this list down to 5 faves with maybe an honorable mention, 3 underrated, and 3 overrated. This was soul crushing for me. Like I said,
I endangered our friendship by putting that restriction on it. It's like I was trying to make it so like our episodes weren't, 2.5, 3 hours long, but at the same time, you start looking at the list, you're like, well, shit, I can't leave off all these movies. It's like so I had like 20 I wanted on the list, and I had to get it down to 5.
That's what I was saying. It's like because horror we did top 10, and yeah, it went long. But so yeah, we even before we finished horror, like we got to cut this down. But I think in the moment, because we were like, we're going to continue the song. We're going to do action, comedy, all this stuff. We're like, this is going to be easy. And then we got to, we're like, oh my God, no. Because I agree. I had like a top 25 for 90s. And then having to figure out, cut. And it just cutting it. It's like, it's just deleting it off the page. No, it felt like I was kicking it off my ship. And it was going to drown and die and never be seen from again. And that's how torturous this was for me. And then it's one of those where it's like you said, compartmentalizing it. Yes, there's action, but I love it so much. But this other movie has more action than this. But because of my love for it, it goes higher. You have to kind of like negotiate with yourself on this. And 90s and 2000 were probably the most painful.
I almost wanted to collaborate with you, like reveal our list to each other ahead of time, just so we could like not overlap and talk about more films. But I'm like, no, we got to be true to ourselves. These are our individual 5.
Yeah, there was that conversation. I thought about that for like a hot second. I was like, no. I was like, because then we're doing no different than what we did with horror, where we're just like talking about 50 movies and we're shooting forever. Because I think, what was it, 80s we had, I think we had 3, we each had the same 3 out of the top 5. Because we both had Die Hard, Predator, and Indiana Jones trilogy. And then I had RoboCop and Aliens, and you had Top Gun and blanking on your 5th one.
I don't recall offhand.
I literally just edited it. I can't remember what it was. So, is there going to be overlap? Sure, but if anything, that's just proving how good these movies are. That we're taking two people's opinions. We have not discussed these beforehand. And we are still picking these together like that. That just solidifies how great these individual films are.
Yeah, for me, the 90s is absolutely going to be the hardest. Because, I mean, if you looked at just my top 100 films, like just overall, I'd say almost half of them are probably from the 90s. This is like that. That was like, my decade of film. I mean, I was what, like 17 to 27 in the 90s, which is kind of when most people kind of form their film tastes. And so that's like where a lot of my favorite films lie. And so, I mean, yes, 2000s will be hard, 2010s. I know you've already done your 2020s list and talked about how that's difficult. I haven't even gotten to that stuff yet. But 90s is, I think, going to be the most difficult for me.
Yeah, I was, like I said in the 1980s episode, I was from age 5 to 15. So it wasn't until 92 when Jurassic Park came out that made me kind of open my eyes to what movies were. 93, sorry. It opened my eyes into what movies were. Instead of just like something on a TV while I'm playing with toys or, just hanging out with my parents, Jurassic Park opened that door. So then from 93 on was when I actually started to pay attention to movies, which is really, not going to lie, for an 8-year-old, that's pretty like, damn, okay, I'm going to start paying attention to this shit. And of course, that was going into 94. That's when, like, you have the occasional ones before from 90 to 94 that are like good action films that are even going to be on this list. But 95, that was like a hot year for action, and 99. So it just was like banger after banger after banger in the 90s. And like I said, 80s started this new concept of action as, like the one-man wrecking machine, explosions, guns, amazing, kung fu ninjas fighting, all this stuff. Now, 80s started it and had some phenomenal films, but we're still tweaking stuff up. 90s was when they perfected the recipe, and there was so many versions of things we saw before. You know, like you said with Die Hard, there's Die Hard on a bus, Die Hard on a plane, Die Hard here, which they took what Die Hard did, changed it up, adapted it, and made it their own, which is why Die Hard on a blank became a thing.
It's
But
also
in the
Die Hard was
90s,
kind of the turning point where you went from kind of the one-man unstoppable army to just like the regular guy in extreme situations, whether it be the Die Hard on a whatever, or anything from, the Air Force One to The Rock to whatever. It was no longer just like the big, huge muscular
or
hero.
even Speed.
Yeah.
Keanu was not fucking John Wick. He was.
Yeah, no, the only thing he'd done action before this was also in the 90s, Point Break, which again was he was just a regular FBI
he was just an undercover cop.
FBI agent.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knew at this point. Everyone knew Keanu as Bill and Ted.
Dead,
yeah. Kind of guy, and there's like, oh shit, Keanu's an action star. It opened the door for so many top stars of today, and who were not anything in the 80s. Like, yes, Sylvester Stallone and Arnold, they were still plugging away, but even Arnold was kind of like, I kind of want to do other things. You started to see him branch. He might have certain movies like Kindergarten Cop where there's action in it, but it's mainly comedy, and he wanted to kind of go off and do other things. Same thing with Stallone. Stallone started to kind of not necessarily go away from it, but wanted to do other things because they were opening the door for these other stars like Keanu, Will Smith, and Wesley Snipes is another one. All these other people were coming through the door going, I can do what Arnold and Sylvester does. Not necessarily better, but they can hand the torch off and we can keep the action train running. And 90s just did a fantastic job of doing that. Like I said, if anyone who's watching us who are, not 90s kids, basically you're 25 or younger, and you guys have not taken the time to go back and watch 90s action, you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, most of the time, you guys, if you watch, cable TV, satellite TV, most of the 90s action is on TV. It's on TNT or FX or any of that shit. Yeah. So there's no way you guys could go completely oblivious to it. But 90s, and also horror and action, was that perfect sweet spot where the recipe was perfected, overused, but perfected.
Well, I think it's because the 90s kind of when just movies in general exploded because, your movie theaters, which would have, 1 to maybe 4 theaters in it, started becoming multiplexes. They had, 16, 30 screens in them where, more theaters come out. Your video stores became more prolific than ever. There's video store like every corner, not only just the Blockbusters and the Hollywood videos, things like that started up, but all the mom and pop video stores. You'd have like 3 of them in the same intersection of a town. You had the rise towards the end of the decade. You had the rise of DVD. All these kind of things that just made more and more movies, and the more that were available to people, you had a lot of crap, but you also had a lot of good ones, and it became movies were kind of the primary entertainment in the 90s. Now it's kind of like almost nobody goes to the movie theaters anymore, and movie theaters are dying. Obviously a lot of us still love it, but the general public, especially the younger generations, is like, oh, you'll sit at home, watch Netflix, whatever. And
I can wait 3 months for it to pop on digital.
Yeah, but in the 90s, like movies were the thing. Every weekend, like everybody went, the movie theater was packed, even if it wasn't, the big, giant Star Wars Marvel release. I mean, not at the time it wasn't Marvel, but even if it wasn't the big release, people just went to the movies. It was like what you did. And so it would kind of, for me, was kind of the prime time of movie going.
And on top of that, even with, yes, DVDs started in 96, 97, not that this was new or anything, but it definitely got perfected as well. Surround sound was, it was around in the 80s. It was expensive as fuck and most people didn't have it. But in 1990s, that's when sound really did start to kind of come into its own with the action sequences as well. You started to pay attention to the detail of sound, like the Matrix.
Even in theaters, they used to advertise, "Ooh, we have hi-fi stereo sound," and now it's surround sound. And then it was like, was it DTS and Dolby Digital and all these things? And the theaters started upgrading, and becoming even better. Now, and yes, at home you started getting it, but it wasn't really affordable for most people until once you got the 2000s or at least the late 90s. But yeah, it's and action movies, I think, are the genre that benefits most from things like upgrades in sound.
Yeah, because it was one of those things where it's like in the 80s, it was, yes, explosions, gunfire, ooh, pretty, it looks awesome on screen. 90s was listen to it. See it and listen to it. Be a part of it. feel it.
THX.
Yes, the THX, the kind of thing. Yes. And I mean, even if you take a movie that is action to what it is, but not like a shoot 'em up, fight 'em up. One of like the top tier surround sound demos when I worked at Best Buy, and that was even in the 2000s, was Twister, because the surround sound made you feel like you were in the fucking tornado. And the 90s was kind of where they once again perfected the surround sound. And then when you go to 2000s, it was just, yeah, we already know how to do this. We're just going to do this kind of thing. So not only did we get the perfect recipe of action and how to tell a story and it be exciting, but visually and auditorily, 90s is the perfect sweet spot of action. And everything after that was just kind of a refresher, or in the 2000s, you kind of more had to do a reboot because it got tiring and you had to kind of change the landscape. The 90s was and has always been the beauty of the action genre.
Yeah, the 90s kind of was reinventing the action genre as well. I mean, like we already talked about kind of the transition from the one-man army, but then just in terms of filmmaking and style, you had like the rise of Michael Bay, you know, starting with Bad Boys and The Rock and then Armageddon. You had, and his kind of completely over-the-top style. Which
Jackie Chan finally became well-known to people.
It was a big thing. You had a new James Bond showed up with Pierce Brosnan. You had a new Zorro during this decade, which I love Zorro. So there was kind of a lot of kind of the changing of the guard to the new people. But like you said, the Schwarzeneggers and Stallones were still doing stuff, but they weren't they didn't own the market. You know, there was room for so much more.
Yeah, we could talk on and on about the 90s, but let's go ahead and get into our list. So while, yes, the 90s was fantastic, and there's so many movies that we're not going to be able to talk about because we just don't have the time, there are some that are maybe hold a little too much weight and don't deserve the praise. Now, some, granted, I will admit, especially on one of mine, I held that weight to it. But then on a rewatch in the last couple of years, I'm like, oh, this is really not as good as I remember. Because once again, as young version of me, ooh, this is so cool. And then you watch it as an adult, you're like, this is actually not that good. And so that's where the overrated aspect comes into play. And I already kind of teased two of these in last week's episode. So why don't you go ahead and get the ball rolling on yours? Do you have an honorable mention for?
I do have an honorable mention that's going to hurt your very soul. This is a movie that has always been super overrated from the day it was released to today when people still praise it. I think just because of nostalgia goggles. And if you loved it when you were a kid, I get it, but it's not a good movie. It is more a family movie, but it's definitely an action movie, and it sucks. And that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990.
Okay, but pause before you go too far into it. Not on any of my lists, so I'm not butthurt. It's got good martial arts scenes, but I wouldn't put it in. I don't think you need to attack the turtles this way, but continue. It's not on any of my list.
The worst of the decade, but it is the most overrated because of people looking at it with nostalgia goggles. Because if you enjoyed it as a kid and you have nostalgia for it, fine. But be honest with yourself and say, but it's not a very good movie. Like you talked about, it has good martial arts sequences. It doesn't. There's these guys in these bulky foam suits trying to do kicks and stuff. Okay. And it's so stiff. It's so bad. The ADR dialogue they put in, with the turtles' voices is awful. And there's nothing about this movie that is impressive. It's the kind of thing that should have gone straight to video in 1990 and been kind of like this thing that kids maybe enjoyed. But I wouldn't have, I don't know what disdain is the wrong word. I wouldn't put it on my overrated honorable mention if it wasn't for people to this day still saying, oh, this later ones weren't good, but that first one was great. It's like, no, it wasn't. And I know it's kind of more a family film, which is why it only made honorable mention. So,
okay, first things first. We don't watch the live action Turtles movies for the action. We watch it for the fucking turtles and the comedy of it. Because we fell in love with the cartoon series, and then they came to life. And you can knock the suits all you want. Those suits in the first one were fucking awesome. The building was Howard Duck didn't look like shit. The movie wasn't good, but I'm not gonna knock the actual Howard the Duck. He looked cool. You're gonna say Howard the Duck looked like crap? That was a cool looking duck.
But you admit that that's not a good movie, despite what you thought about Turtles.
Yeah, I'm not going to defend Howard the Duck the movie, but I will defend. Yeah. But I will defend Howard the Duck because
Howard the Duck wasn't trying to do martial arts movies in that suit.
But once again, I'm not defending the action of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because yes, it is 4 guys in a turtle suit. I commend them for being able to do what they did in those suits because that's not easy by any fucking means. You watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the camaraderie of the 4 brothers, for the fun dialogue of the 4 brothers, and the story that it's telling. You don't watch it because Michelangelo is doing a fucking flip. You're watching him use nunchucks, and this is fun because it's Michelangelo using nunchucks. You're not watching going, this is the epitome of action of all film. No, you watch the movie for fun as a whole. It's not an action like love.
The first thing you said was, but the martial arts were great.
No, not for Turtles. I said it wasn't great.
Rewind the
tape. I said no. I was talking about like martial arts for like Jackie Chan and like eventually Jet Li in the late 90s because Jet Li showed up. Turtles, the martial arts, you don't watch it for the action and the fighting. You commend the people in the suits for being able to pull off what they fucking did. But yeah, they didn't do anything outright crazy. I mean, you're not going to see Stallone or Schwarzenegger go and do high, roundhouse kicks or anything like that. But there's nothing super crazy in the action level of it. You watch it for the fun of these characters. Like I'm one of those people who will defend the second one, even though it's extra campy and it's extra kiddie, but it's fucking entertaining. The reason why everyone loves the 91 over the others, and I know we've had this conversation before, which is why Brian's like, oh, it's more that it was darker than the others. All the other ones are very, very kid. 90s at least was more like, oh shit, fucking, Leonardo might die, and they're like, fuck Leo. And it's like, oh shit. That's why the 90s one is so beloved because they didn't have little kitty gloves on with us. They were like, no, this is legit. And that's why the 90s one's slow. It's not because of the action, it's because of the fucking story. But anyway, I'm not angry at you for doing this. I think it's an unnecessary dig, but it is what it is. My first overrated is, like I said, I kind of teased this up in last week's episode. I love 3 out of the 5 of this franchise. This is not one of them. And that's Die Hard 2. I don't think Die Hard 2 even remotely matches up to Die Hard, which once again, Die Hard's on a mountain on his own. Die Hard 2, it's Die Hard in an airport. Well, yeah, but it doesn't. The action isn't quite there. I don't think the story's that great. It's the first one that really made me feel that Bruce Willis was just doing this for a paycheck. But then Die Hard with a Vengeance came out, and it completely was like, oh, I fucking love Die Hard with a Vengeance. That one to me is it's not close to Die Hard, but it's the one that I love the most after Die Hard. Die Hard 2, I have a hard time remembering it because it just never did much for me. And so in terms of like action films of the 90s, especially when we went from like the best in terms of Die Hard 2, yes, you have like the plane going through the airport, you have the fighting in the snow, the fighting in the actual airport, all that kind of stuff. It's a pale comparison to what Die Hard did. And that's why it's on my overrated.
Yeah, well, I think one of the big differences, it's noticeable, is the fact that 1 and With a Vengeance were John McTiernan. 2 is Rennie Harlin, director.
But Rennie Harlin did fucking Lethal Weapon. So didn't he do?
He did
one of them though.
No, Rennie Harlin did things like Cutthroat Island and what else did he do? He did Deep Blue Sea. There's some things in there.
Yeah, I love Deep Blue Sea.
He's not nearly the same director as John McTiernan. Now, 2 I do enjoy, but I do consider it the 4th best of the 4 Die Hard movies because 5 doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. 5 does not exist. We don't talk about 5 in this house.
It is. I would consider it the weakest of the 4, but I still do enjoy it. I think that it also came out in a time when that late 80s, early 90s. When sequels were just, pump out another one, same thing, put a 2 on it, make some more money. And it's like, as you got into the 90s, they started actually putting a little more effort into, growing the story and the universe and things in these franchises. So while 2, it broke no new ground, it was essentially a rehash in a different location. I enjoyed it, but I would not consider it like one of the great
What's
action movies
funny
of the 90s.
is you could throw up a bunch of random villains from the 80s and the 90s, and you go, Sean, tell me which one is the villain from Die Hard 2. I'm not gonna be able to do it. And I've watched Die Hard 2 more than 10 times. So it's not like, oh, I only watched it once and that was it. I still
It's William Sadler.
It's who?
William Sadler.
Oh, okay. And now that you say that, I guess. But you know what though? If you would have thrown up like 10 villains that were not big name, probably
I agree. I was just saying I remember it, but
everything in Die Hard 2 just pales in comparison to the first one and even the third one. But yeah, what's your next one?
My next one started off a trilogy so far that I wish didn't exist. And that was, I believe it was 98, and that is Rush Hour. I find this movie and franchise to just be mostly grating. I think Chris Tucker is obnoxious and annoying. I know he's kind of supposed to be in the character, but it's not in a funny way. It's just in an annoying way. Jackie Chan, this is kind of the first movie where Jackie Chan started to make me sad, because Jackie Chan, if you watch his movies for the 90s up until then, now granted some of those had come out like in the late 80s, early 90s in Hong Kong,
and then got re-released in the US.
Got kind of redubbed or whatever and released here, like Rumble in the Bronx, Super Cop, which was one of the police story movies, things like that. Those movies, Jackie Chan is phenomenal. By the time he kind of hit in the America with Rumble in the Bronx and Super Cop, and started in I think it was 95 with Rumble in the Bronx. By the time he started to become a thing in the US, like, oh, let's put him in American movies, he was already getting to the point where like he was a little old to be doing the same kind of stuff he did then. They still had him doing these, crazy stunts, but they definitely were not to the same level. And he did start using, wires and things and special effects to help him out, because he couldn't do the things he could do in the older movies, especially not at the same pace. He was still, better than 80% of the action stars out there.
Yeah, let's not pretend that Jackie Chan still wasn't like
he still did fun stunts, but he wasn't anywhere near the Jackie. So when people fell in love with Rush Hour and it became this big, huge franchise, I'm like, I'm glad you like him, but go back and watch his good stuff. Don't focus on this. This is not the Jackie Chan. This is not the true Jackie Chan. And if it was a gateway to make people go watch his old stuff, then yes, I will commend it for that. But I think too many people just watched the Rush Hour movies alone and saw him and Chris Tucker, and I didn't find them funny. But as far as this series is concerned, the action wasn't very impressive. But people just love this franchise.
I don't mind the first two. I hate Rush Hour 3. Rush Hour 3 was a total cash grab. I think in terms of action, Rush Hour 2 is the better of the two. And that's because they added oh god, what's her name from Crouching Tiger? Is that Zazing or I can't remember. But yeah, part 2's easily the better in terms of action. I don't mind Chris Tucker, but that's because I fell in love with him in The Fifth Element, like everyone else did. Well, I'm sure most people fell in love with him from Friday, but for me, it was Fifth Element. So I was happy with Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. I like their chemistry together. But no, Rush Hour, not much of an action movie. Now, if you were going to say Rush Hour 2, I'd be like, oh, okay, I actually like Rush Hour 2's action. But in terms of the epitome of everything from the 90s, yeah, no, it's nowhere close. I wouldn't even put Rush Hour, any of the Rush Hours, probably in my top fucking 75 or 100. Now, in terms of like enjoyability, it's probably higher, but that's more the comedy and the buddy cop comedy part of those two together. But in terms of like the action aspect of it, no, Rush Hour is not even in like probably my top 75, top 100 for 90s.
Zhang Ziyi was the person you were thinking of.
Which she just disappeared. She was like gonna be like Michelle Yeoh, and then she just kind of faded away after Rush Hour 2, I feel.
Well, I think it's one of those people that especially in the 90s, when they started bringing over Jackie Chan and then Jet Li and then obviously Michelle Yeoh and some of these other female stars, they realized that a lot of these people who are stars over there, some of them were able to make the transition, but some of them, when you start putting them in American movies and start making them try to speak English or start making them try to actually act, it's like you realize maybe they don't quite have it. So they didn't become the stars they wanted them to.
I think the last thing I remember her in might have been Shanghai Nights. Once again, Jackie Chan again. I want to say she was in that, and I don't think I ever saw her again after that.
No, she wasn't in that one. Actually, the last thing I see her in as far as a big release was Godzilla King of the Monsters. I don't remember her in that. But
I do. She was like one of the Mothra girls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but anyway,
What's
my
your
next overrated. And this is the one I'm talking about, where it's like 5+ years ago, if you brought this movie up, I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. And now I watch this movie, I'm like, young me loved the movie, but it doesn't hit the same way. That's Cliffhanger.
Huh.
Cliffhanger, and I think we watched this for Weekend Crusaders or Weekend Crusaders or something like that. I think it was like one of our revisited films. Stallone doing his Stallone thing. Yeah, John Lithgow.
Stallone doing his Die Hard thing.
Yeah, yes. John Lithgow as a villain to me is always a positive. I think he's I don't want to say he's criminally underrated, because if he was criminally underrated, we wouldn't see him do it as much, and he's doing it more and more and more. But he's always one of those, like, everyone knows him as like Harry and the Hendersons, Third Rock from the Sun, and all these other things. It was like, but he's a villain though. I love Lithgow as a villain. But Stallone, by Stallone's standards, this one's pretty light. There's not a whole lot to the movie. The action is solid, not great. The dialogue is rough through this movie. And just everything about it, I think it's got that 90s nostalgia like all up on it. And you also have the Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, calling back to it. So you have like that connection to it. It's been parodied. The opening scene has been parodied many times. I think Ace Ventura did it the best. But yeah, it's like I started going back and rewatching it for the show and going, am I just not in a good mood, or is this movie just really not as good as I remember it being? Which, that's one of the heartbreaks that you get when you become older and you go back and you watch movies from your childhood that you unabashedly developed your whole love for, and you go back and watch it like, holy shit, this movie sucks. It's not as good as I remember. Especially for me, there's a lot of 80s movies and 90s movies like that where I love them so much, and you go back and watch them now, it's like, this is not a good movie. And Cliffhanger is kind of one of those. It was one of those that like I said, about 5 years ago would have defended. If Brian would have said it, I would have been like, what the fuck? Now I'm like, yeah, it's not that good. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I consider Cliffhanger overrated. But I see what you mean in terms of
if you think of 90s Stallone, it is probably in his top 5.
But I mean, just by the general public, I don't think people are like, Cliffhanger, some of the greatest action movies. But the angle that you're looking at it from, which is it's not as good as I remember it, so almost like I was kind of overrating it. I do see that approach to it, because I watched it. I guess probably the last time I watched it was for the Weekend Crusaders, and I still enjoy the movie.
It's not a bad movie, but it's not as good as I remember.
Stallone has made a lot of movies that I don't really like. And he's made several I do like too, but he's made a lot I didn't like. And this is one of the ones where I expected to not like it. And I enjoyed it. I liked the supporting cast. Janine Turner, I kind of always wish had had a bigger career from Northern Exposure. She was like the main female lead in this one. John Lithgow, I want to say this is the first time, or one of the first times.
I want to say this was his first villain role.
One of the first times, but I think he was a villain in Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai.
No. He was a villain in that Christmas movie with Dudley Moore.
Oh, he was like movie. I never saw that one.
He was the evil businessman. That was the first time.
I want to say this is the first one I saw him as a villain though. But I thought he was good. But it was absolutely trying to be Die Hard on a Mountain. And for me, it worked. But I will admit that I don't enjoy it as much as I did when it first came out. But I think that was more just a case of people were surprised by this, mountain climbing movie. It was actually enjoyable. But my main thing when I think of Cliffhanger is that there's a remake coming out starring Lily James. And Pierce Brosnan plays her father. And I'm like, I kind of want to see that because I like those people. I like the concept of Cliffhanger, so I'll see what they do with it.
I never heard.
Clearly, it's not going to be the same movie because she's not Sylvester.
Okay, I was gonna say, I was like, when the hell did this get announced?
Oh no, it's already filmed. I don't think
it's Cliffhanger. It's Cliffhanger.
It's called Cliffhanger. Yeah, and
we never talked about
not coming out this year. I think it's coming out next year. But I'm curious to, and I think it can work because Cliffhanger. There weren't really scenes in this movie that relied on Sylvester Stallone being the muscle bound strong guy.
Except for the first scene where he's got to hold the woman. That's all muscle there, man. That whole scene was just glistening his arm for the whole first 5-10 minutes of the movie.
So I'm curious to see that one, but yeah, this is a decent. Like I said, depending on how you're defining it, I can agree with this pick.
What's your
my next one up is gonna piss off a lot of action purists, and that is Hard Boiled. This is a John Woo movie, which John Woo on his own is maybe the single most overrated action director of all time. He loves slow-mo more than Zack Snyder does. He loves to have his doves in every action scene because who the fuck knows why. And Chow Yun-fat, this is kind of one of his first breakout roles before he did like this and The Killer, before he kind of started doing American films. I heard so much about this movie, especially because I worked at at the video store in the 90s. And so, the people who are really into movies would all come, tell me about their favorite obscure movies or things that weren't big hits in America. And so I'm like, oh, I got to check out these, John Woo action films. And I watched them and I was bored to death. I thought they weren't well made. I thought the action wasn't impressive. And yet to this day, if you see lists of the top 100 action movies of all time, this will show up on there. And I just don't get it. And I honestly don't remember a lot of the details of this movie. I watched it once and said, okay, I don't ever need to watch this movie again. But the fact that I still see it pop up in these best of lists means it absolutely belongs on the most overrated.
I still have never seen this.
Don't bother.
And I think it's just because Chow Yun-fat never really did much for me. I think the only thing I ever really legit watched him in was it Replacement Killers with Marina Sorvino?
There's Replacement Killers. The
Pirates and then what's that?
Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End he was in.
I'm talking about where he was the focal point.
Yeah.
Wow, what was the Jackie Chan? It wasn't Forbidden Kingdom because that was Jet Li and Jackie Chan. Was it? Or was it Bulletproof Monk? Bulletproof Monk. That's what it was. Yeah, those are
saw that one. I don't know if I ever saw that one.
Yeah, those are my Chow Yun-fats. So I was never really crazy about this. And John Woo, the only John Woo I watched where I legit enjoyed was Face Off, and I know you don't like that. Don't worry.
We're talking about that soon.
Oh, that's your number one? Really?
That's my number one, baby. Anyway, move on to your two.
All right, fine. Well, I only have one left. Because you had an honorable mention. I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here, let me just go ahead and talk about. We'll just segue into Face Off then.
Go ahead and tack Face Off.
So they brought John Woo to America, and he made Hard Target, which was a serviceable action film with Jean-Claude Van Damme. It was more a Jean-Claude Van Damme film than a John Woo film, except for the excessive slow-mo and the doves, which he managed to shove in that movie as well. It was a retelling of Most Dangerous Game. It was what it was.
Okay, pause. Who is the worst at slow-mo? John Woo or Snyder?
John Woo.
Really?
Yes.
Over Snyder?
Yes.
Okay. I don't watch enough John Woo to argue this. I was just curious.
He'll do the same thing Zack Snyder does in terms of slow-mo can be used well. Look at 300. There's a lot of slow-mo shots in there, but it kind of fits in kind of the artistic style of it.
Well, because there's so much of it you would miss if you didn't.
And Zack Snyder in movies like Dawn of the Dead, things like that, he has movies where he can keep himself under control and not really use slow-mo or not use it excessively. John Woo uses it for everything. Somebody can be pulling out a lighter to light their cigarette and it has to be super slow-mo. They can be opening a car door. Whoa, slow-mo.
Zack Snyder did farming in slow-mo, Rebel Moon. Don't you defend him on that. Let's toss the grain in slow-mo.
I even said Zack Snyder uses excessively. John Woo is worse. Okay. So anyway, John Woo came to America.
I just wanted to know.
But then John Woo, they put him in the Face Off is the one. Obviously, Nick Cage and John Travolta. The John Woo of it all is bad. There's far too much slow-mo. There's the fucking stupid doves. Just so the action of this movie is not impressive in any way, shape, or form. But on top of that, you have Nick Cage giving one of the worst performances of his career. You have John Travolta giving one of the worst performances of his career. And this is
I
in
also disagree.
this is in this range because, like, you know, John Travolta has had a roller coaster of a career, and this is like he'd gone down. Pulp Fiction brought him back, and then he put out a bunch of movies like this and Broken Arrow, and these movies where he would play a villain who would be like, you know, over the top. And John Travolta is just not a good actor when it comes to trying to do that. He's just it comes across very cheesy.
You didn't like him in Broken Arrow?
No.
Okay.
I enjoyed Broken Arrow to an extent.
But it's not because of Travolta.
Not because of Travolta. He was like the worst thing about it.
Okay.
Yeah. But the dialoguing was awful. The whole concept of it was fucking stupid as shit. Your face off. And so, but yet again, this is a movie that people rave about. Oh my god, that movie is one of my favorites of the '90s. And I'm like, what the fuck movie did you watch? This movie sucks.
I fucking love Face Off. It's not on my list. It's not on my list. I fucking love Face Off.
I think like a year or so ago, I don't remember exactly when it was. I was like, you know what? I need to. Everyone still praised this movie. Maybe it's one of those movies like, you know, for whatever reason I didn't like back in the day. I'm going to give it a second chance. And I went in with the mindset of I've got to go in with an open mind. I'm going to just watch it like it's watching it fresh. And I'm like, nope, still fucking sucks.
I unabashedly love that movie so much. And I think Travolta and Cage are great in the movie. Like I said, not on any of my lists. It was one of those that I just don't have enough space. Now, if we were doing maybe top 10, but definitely my top 25. My top 25 Face Off definitely would have been on there. But yeah. Okay, so we both have one left, right?
No, that was my last one.
Oh, that was your last one?
I segued into my number one from Hard Boiled. Didn't leave you for your number one.
I thought so. You had four.
TMNT, Rush Hour, Hard Boiled,
and then okay, Face Off. Okay. My last one, we kind of already. Well, you already shit on him in the '80s, and I said I was going to talk about him in the '90s, and that's Steven Seagal.
I agree.
It's Steven Seagal. Under Siege.
Yep.
This.
One of the first Die Hard ripoffs.
You know how I know Under Siege isn't that good? And once again, not a knock on the actor because I fucking love the actor. When the main and then once again, this is just like Die Hard. Alan Rickman is not an action star. So when it finally got to the end in Die Hard, there's not much of a fight there. Right. Same thing goes with Tommy Lee Jones in this. Tommy Lee Jones, I think this is what got him Two-Face and Batman Forever. Because he's basically playing the Two-Face side of this. Tommy Lee Jones is playing this so cartoonishly, like, over the top. And the only other person that probably out-cheesed up Tommy Lee Jones in terms of a villain is Willem Dafoe in Speed 2 Cruise Control. Oh. Which was the first thing I ever saw Willem Dafoe in. So my brain, when I see Willem Dafoe, I immediately think of Speed 2 Cruise Control.
Speed 2 also filed under sequels that don't exist.
Exactly. Except for Dafoe. But it's what Seagal and Wesley Snipes, they both have the same kind of fighting style. Is they wait for people to come to them and they just go and hit, and that's their fighting style. But Snipes makes it look cool, and Seagal just looks like a overtly tall dude who's just like holding someone's like a small person's head and letting them swipe, and then he just hits them. And that's Seagal's fighting style in most of his movies. He's got the acting skills of a wooden block. He's got the that's what he talks like. And 90% of the movies tell me I'm wrong.
Oh no, you're not wrong. I'm agreeing with everything you've said so far. Keep going.
And he's a chef in this, which is also just, I don't want to eat anything this man ever cooks, ever. There's just nothing about this movie that's entertaining except for what's her name coming out of the cake. And then they had a sequel to this, which I think I enjoyed the sequel more because it's on a train, and for some reason that worked better for me. But Under Siege is not good. It's not. And people blew this movie up out of proportion when it came out.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about in the 80s. I never understood the appeal of Steven Seagal at all. I don't know why it became a thing, because it wasn't impressive martial arts.
You
He wasn't
know,
an impressive actor. There wasn't great action sequences. So I don't know why it is. And then when they got to these, this I think is probably his most praised movie. So absolutely belongs on your overrated list. I
yeah,
completely agree with this. The only reason I didn't include it is because I barely remember. I saw Under Siege and Under Siege 2. I want to say I only ever saw each of them one time, and that was when they came out. So I have vague memories at best.
yeah. The I think what Seagal's thing was is he he had a look of this like kind of guy, and where like the slick back ponytail, he's soft spoken, all this kind of stuff. I'm sorry. If you guys want to see a better martial arts guy with a slick back ponytail, all you gotta look at is John Silver from The Karate Kid. That guy is 1,000 times better than Steven fucking Seagal. And you want to know why? Because he fucking got into Cobra Kai and was still one of the best fucking villains in the last couple of years. That dude, I'm blanking on the actual actor's name, so I apologize. I know I just had my phone out. That guy was way better than Steven Seagal, and that guy did not have the career that Seagal did. But yeah, Steven Seagal. The only thing I would have loved to have seen, just for the razziness of it all, is a Seagal Jean-Claude Van Damme movie with them together. And this comes from someone who actually likes Jean-Claude Van Damme. But the acting prowess of those two sharing a scene together, I kind of want to see it just to see the dumpster fire of it all.
Well, my thing is Jean-Claude Van Damme can't act, but he clearly has far superior martial arts skills. So you can enjoy his movies. Would
fucking murder Seagal.
Yeah, so you can enjoy Jean-Claude's movies on that level, and he also has, at least some charisma to him. Now back in some of his earlier movies like Bloodsport and things like that, I didn't see it so much. But as he made movies like Time Cop and some of these other ones that we liked in the 90s,
Sudden Death.
Yeah, he was enjoyable. Steven Seagal has never made a single movie that I've actually liked.
I was never a Seagal fan, and every time I would try to watch one of his movies to see let me see what the craze is about. I really couldn't get through them. Jean-Claude Van Damme, I can watch all his movies. A lot of his movies feel the same, but I can enjoy them.
Yeah, they're never my favorites list, but I can sit down and watch them and enjoy them.
Yeah, but I never could get behind Seagal ever. Yeah. He never did a movie with another actor like Jackie Chan with Chris Tucker or Jean-Claude Van Damme with.
Not true. There's the Glimmer Man with Keenan Ivory Wayans.
That doesn't. That's like saying Double Team with Dennis Rodman and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Come on. No one is gonna get that reference, but you and I. But if you guys actually go back and watch, oh god, was it Weekend Crusaders where we talked about Double Team? You guys will get the cut. Our actual true fans of this channel will understand what that meant. Double Team.
We have to make that tiger our logo for this channel.
Yes. Okay, let's go ahead and go to underrated.
Do you have an honorable mention?
I'm like fighting between two of them, and it's hurting my heart because they're both kind of in the same kind of.
You know what? Just stay on both. Just do one briefly. Go ahead.
Well, one you mentioned already, and that's because it's and like I said, my underrated. Do I consider most of these underrated films? No, but the '90s action is so fucking good that I threw them into my underrated just so we could talk about them. So before I say this, you're like, that's not underrated. Well, no, but I only have 5 spots or 6 spots for honorable mention for fave, so I want to talk about these. There are 2 movies in the 90s. One Brian loves, and the other one Brian doesn't care for. But they both have the same kind of fighting style. And I enjoy both these movies immensely. I think the casts are great. I think the stories are great. And I love watching the fighting, which is the swashbuckling films. And that leaves me to Zorro with Antonio Banderas and the Three Musketeers. Disney's Three Musketeers with Kiefer and Charlie Sheen and all that. I love both these movies. I love the sword fighting. You don't get a lot of sword fighting anymore. The only other one I can think of off the top of the head is like Princess Bride, which was 80s. I love.
I'd say Pirates is about the only thing you see sword fighting anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, for the 2000s. Yeah. I love the choreography that they do with the sword fighting in these movies. And with Zorro, you have like a whole bunch of else. You have them, and even Three Musketeers. There's a lot of like choreography of them like using these. What I love about these movies is, and John Wick is fantastic at this as well, especially the last two. They might have a big ass space in the room that they're in. They utilize all the space. You know, with a lot of action, movies, you'll see like, okay, they're in a big room, but they're really kind of just going in a straight line back and forth. They're not utilizing the whole room. Sword fighting, they go everywhere and they utilize their space. And Zorro and Three Musketeers does such a great job, because these are the ones where like they'll start fighting and they'll fight up the stairs and they'll and then the camera has to follow. It's like almost where you never got the one track or the one shot track shots for these, just because it'd be too fucking hard back then. But these are the ones that, like, if they were made today, there'd be so many one shots of them like fighting up the stairs and down the corridors and hallways. And I just always have loved sword fighting films when done correctly. And these two are two of the best. Like I said, cast alone with Zorro, you got Hopkins and Antonio Banderas, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Whoa, yeah, that's a whole other thing. But I love the cast for that one. And Three Musketeers, like I said, yeah, Chris O'Donnell, Kiefer Sutherland, Charlie Sheen. Oliver Platt. Yeah, I love those. For Tim Curry as the villain. I mean, come the fuck on. Also, oh god, what's his name? Raspy voice guy.
Michael Wincott.
Yes,
Michael Wincott's one of my favorite character actors. He was in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He was in this. He's in Strange Days. He's in so much. The Crow, obviously the main one. I love Michael Wincott.
I love these.
I thought he'd retired from acting, but then he showed up in, what was it? Nope. He showed up in Nope. Yeah.
I love these two movies. I would say Three Musketeers probably deserves to be on this list. Zorro doesn't, but Zorro wasn't going to make my top 5, so I had to talk about it here.
I have no problem with that. I don't love Three Musketeers the way you do, but Zorro, I love. I think most people actually have. Most people who have seen it obviously love.
Okay,
Zorro.
help me. It's not Zorro. Is it Mask or Mark of Zorro? Mask is the first.
It's Mask of Zorro. There is a Mark of Zorro, but that's an old movie.
No, but what was the sequel?
The sequel is Legend of Zorro.
Legend, okay.
Which Mask of Zorro, I think most people love. It does not get talked about enough, so I have no problem with it making your list here, because it deserves to be talked about more. I think
it's more or less because of Puss in Boots. Everyone just sings Antonio Banderas. But I'm like, no, man, he was fucking Zorro first.
And Zorro was awesome. Everything about Zorro, I loved. I loved the feeling of it. I loved the tone of it. I loved the music. I loved the action. I loved the comedy that they put into it. Now, when they made Legend of Zorro, I still enjoy it, but it's definitely nowhere near as good as the first.
It's a cash grab sequel that they were all contractually obligated.
They did the thing where they give them kids, which always is, let's just make this appeal more to family audiences. Yeah. And then they also decided, for some reason, let's have Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones, who had such phenomenal chemistry, let's have them where they're having marital problems, and so they aren't really getting along and they're together. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? You're ruining what made the first one so good. But that's the second one. I won't get into that. Okay, sorry.
Yes, go ahead with your next one.
Yeah, my honorable mention, we've talked about this person again, and I'm gonna go with Jackie Chan. Because Jackie Chan, like I said, his movies that got imported kind of to the US in the 90s, I think at the time a lot of people really got into them, but I think nowadays a lot of people, especially younger generations, have not seen these movies. So his movies like Rumble in the Bronx and Super Cop and some of these are great action movies.
I'm one of them.
Jackie Chan can really do, which you should absolutely watch. I was trying to decide which ones to put on here. I decided to put his lesser known ones on here that even people who watch Jackie Chan might not have heard of. Mr. Nice Guy was a good one, but I decided to go with a movie called Who Am I? Because Who Am I is one I don't even think got a theatrical release in the US. I think it came straight to DVD and video.
I've never even heard of this one.
But Who Am I is one that where he has he gets amnesia, obviously is where the title comes from. It's a dumb title. But it has, and like all Jackie Chan movies, the plot is just kind of this paper thin thing, just excuse to string together some action sequences. So I'm not going to praise the plot, but it has some of the most impressive action sequences. And for what Jackie Chan for, which is like these crazy stunts that he does, for real with, the no wire work, and he's putting himself in danger. This is one of my favorites of his movies from that perspective. And like all his movies, it has like over the end credits, it has like kind of the bloopers where they're messing up when they're trying to film stuff, and some of the most fun moments are in that. So if people want to see Jackie Chan movies from back when he was in his prime, there's the better known ones, of course, that got theatrical releases, but I also recommend Mr. Nice Guy and then this one, Who Am I?
Is there this is one of those that was not an American film?
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I will say this, as much as I love Jackie
I want to
Chan,
say his first American film was Rush Hour. Like I said, Rumble in the Bronx and some of those got American theatrical releases, but they had already been films overseas first.
yeah, I would like say, as much as I love Jackie Chan, he's still a blind spot for me. I have not watched. There's too many Jackie Chan movies I have not watched. I've never seen Rumble in the Bronx. I've never seen Operation Condor.
Well, Operation Condor is great. Project A. Yeah,
I've never seen. I've never seen any of the Drunken Masters. I don't know why I love Jackie Chan, but for some reason I just don't ever think, hey, let's watch a Jackie Chan movie. I just my brain just never goes to that. So I'll admit Jackie Chan is kind of a blind spot for me. As much as I enjoy him, I don't ever really go back and watch any of his former work that much. Now his American,
that's all I watch, because I mean he has the Shanghai Nights and the Rush Hours and things like that, but it's like those do nothing for me. It's like
I watch those more for the buddy cop kind of aspect of it, with him and Owen Wilson and him and Chris Tucker. Not necessarily
they're entertaining in their own, but if I'm watching Jackie Chan for the action of a Jackie Chan movie, I'm going to go back and watch his old stuff. What's your three? Oh, sorry.
This is the one that probably most people don't know. I know you know it. This is one of those movies that, like I said in the 80s, more times than not with cable TV being around, this is when you would catch these weird movies on like Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings kind of thing. You're flipping through TV. And this is one of those where I think I maybe had watched this movie like 20 times on TV and always would catch it in parts. And this is not a high-rated movie. It's a rotten. It's like a 33 on Rotten Tomato. But I have this nostalgia of this franchise. There's two movies. One was a legit movie. The other one felt like very much a straight-to-DVD, which I still enjoy. And that's The Guyver.
Oh, jeez.
Yes.
I never saw two. The first one I saw one time, back when I worked at a video store. But it's like, wow. I forgot about those. The
Guyver. The Guyver. The closest thing I can say is, what's The Guyver about? In terms of a suit, the closest thing I can think about it right now is kind of like Blue Beetle, except that it's not an alien. It's
it's very similar. Now it's based on an anime, right? I think.
Yes, it is. It's this suit attaches to this guy and it completely overtakes his body, and it's not like a suit he can take off. It's embedded in him kind of thing, and it's Mark Hamill. So like there's what's that?
Like a Venom kind of thing, except it's a suit.
Exactly. But it's not like this alien thing that talks to him. It just kind of overtakes him and he becomes like this alternate persona. And it's kind of like with RoboCop. It's this evil corporation kind of thing. And they're almost like kind of like The Fly. They like created like these mutant monsters. And so Mark Hamill's like this agent who stumbles upon the Guyver and puts it on. And the evil corporation wants it back. So he sends all these mutant monsters after him. And it's basically it's obviously not Mark Hamill in the suit, because Mark Hamill can't fight like this. But it's this martial artist guy in this Guyver suit who's supposed to be Mark Hamill. And he's fighting just mutant monsters through this whole movie. The acting's not great, but it is fun watching this. And the suit looks awesome too, by the way. I think everything about this looks. I think the character design, like of the monsters, like the mutants, I think they look good. The Guyver suit looks good. The fighting, I mean, you basically have a guy who's doing martial arts, fighting guys in like Godzilla costumes that really can't move that well. So the guy is kind of doing all the work around for him. But I unabashedly, this is definitely one of those, like how Brian loves Toxic Avenger. It's like Brian knows Toxic Avenger is not a good movie, but he enjoys the garbage of it. I know Guyver is not a good movie, but I love the garbage of it all. And I even like the sequel for what it is. The sequel is worse than the first one, but I can easily sit down and watch both these movies and just be like, the whole time, knowing, oh, that was a shit scene, but I still fucking loved it. And this is the epitome of underrated for me, because not, like I said, maybe 10% of the people out there who are not like diehard Mark Hamill fans know this movie fucking exists, unless they're fans of the anime.
Yeah,
Which
and I've heard of it, but I haven't thought about it in 25 years. So yeah.
oh, I forgot about it. And then while I was going through the 90s, I was trying to think of underrated. It's like, what's a movie that like I think I still even gave this like only 3 stars. But like the nostalgia of it hit me. I was like, oh, I've got to talk about the Guyver. Because we will never talk about the Guyver ever, except for this fucking moment right here. So yeah, definitely my number 3 right there.
My number 3, and again, these aren't really rated, but the first one I'm going to talk about is a movie that Sean knows. I'm pretty sure Sean loves it too. And I think a lot of people have heard of it, but it's one of those movies that I think too many people still haven't seen. I will say all three of my underrated are action comedies, but there's enough action in them they qualify as an action film. And the first one is 1997's Grosse Pointe Blank. This is John Cusack as a hitman who goes back to his 10-year. Oh my gosh, only 10 years.
High school reunion.
It's 10-year high school reunion. Where ends his old girlfriend, Minnie Driver, but he's there to carry out an assassination. He doesn't know who until later. Find out, look into the plot of it. But this is kind of John Cusack's, I think, best film since like his 80s run. And I think his brand of kind of comedy and cynicism and sarcasm just fits this character perfectly. But the action scenes themselves, I think, are super well done. Whether it be his hand-to-hand fight in the hallways of the high school with the one big assassin, or his gunfights against Dan Aykroyd or anybody else in the movie. I think that it's a fun action comedy that not enough people have seen, and if they have seen it, not enough people talk about.
This movie and one other movie that you and I both love, and you may be talking about it here for underrated because not people talk about it.
Probably.
Is I don't know if I want to say because I don't know if I want to take it away from you. Is it Wahlberg's movie?
Yeah.
You're gonna talk about that? Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna hold off on that movie that he's gonna talk about, and this. I thought about both of them. And I think I've had Grosse Pointe in my brain more towards comedy, and I think that was me to get. And I think
definitely more comedy.
And the other movie was kind of the same. I was like, they've got action scenes, but it's more funny than action. So now it's kind of like I said, compartmentalizing how to set this list. I took them out because I see them as more comedy than action. So Grosse Pointe Blank, which is great, and the other movie you're going to talk about, they got knocked off my list because they were more comedy than action based. But I love both. And we're going to talk about the other one here in just a moment. But yeah, Grosse Pointe Blank, that's one of those, and like I said, when I think of John Cusack, there are probably 2 famous people. One is Cusack and the other one is Shane McMahon from wrestling. Whenever I watch these 2, they remind me of my older brother, Jonathan.
Oh. I was like, I don't know where he's going with this.
Yeah. No, they kind of have similar kind of look. And my brother looks like that. And their cynicism and their sarcasticness, both of these guys, are the same as my brother. So when I watch them, I have a fondness to both these people because they remind me of my older brother, who's like 10 years older than me, who probably doesn't watch any of these because why? But whenever I think of Cusack, and which is why I so badly want Cusack to be relevant again, because it just reminds me of my brother. And I was like, if he succeeds, it's like my brother succeeds. It's like that in my brain. That's how I compartmentalize it. But yeah, Grosse Pointe Blank is a lot of fun. And like I said, the other movie that you're going to talk to, that's a movie that you and I unabashedly praise to everybody that will listen. But my next one, look, this is not an underrated. Anyone who knows 90s action knows this fucking movie, quotes this fucking movie, can call back scenes from this fucking movie. We both love this movie. I just could not get it into my top 6. Now, you'll probably hear my top 6. I would have put this movie in there over this, but I wanted this to be talked about because I don't know if you're going to talk about it. And if you do, great. Demolition Man. Did I say anything wrong on your side of things?
No, I was just trying to figure out what you were going to talk about. And okay, yeah.
Do you talk about Demolition Man at all?
No, I'm not going to talk about it. It didn't make my list. Go ahead.
Demolition Man. Wesley Snipes as Simon Phoenix, one of my favorite villains of the 90s. He's so damn good in this. Sylvester Stallone, once again, great. This, I'm sure I saw her in other things prior to this, but this and Speed is what introduced Sandra Bullock to me.
Yeah, Sandra Bullock had done like a small rom-com called Love Potion Number 9, which I don't think got a theatrical release, and then some little independent films. But this was basically Lori Petty was originally cast in this role. They started filming this movie with Lori Petty. She quit for whatever reason. They brought in Sandra Bullock, and this is kind of where the world first saw Sandra Bullock, and kind of, I mean, I wouldn't call it her breakthrough role, but it's the movie that people noticed her and got her breakthrough roles in, like Speed and While You're Sleeping and such. But
yeah, I love. Sadly, the world today is becoming more and more like Demolition Man, and that's not in a good way.
You know what I was thinking about? I think about Demolition Man and how kind of prescient it was and kind of predicting the world. It's like there's a conversation with Benjamin Bratt and Sandra Bullock where he's basically asking like how many views, how many hits she got on her website that week, and I'm like, this is fucking modern day where people like they measure their value by how many views I got, how many likes I got. Like, holy shit.
And it's such a throwaway line that you don't think much about it. And now you look and say like, oh shit. I love the world that they built in this. I don't love the world, but I love what they did with this movie. I love that to just be like a normal human being and not a part of this newer society. You basically have to be like a fucking underground sewer rat. Dennis Leary, also great in this movie. Benjamin Bratt, great in this movie. Oh god, I never know his fucking name, but he was also in Beetlejuice, the big dude. He always just plays like a side character.
Glenn something. Glenn Shattuck. He played Otho in Beetlejuice. Yeah.
Yes, he's great in this movie. Jack Black's got a small part in it as well. Is in a blink and you miss it. You don't. Jesse the Body Ventura is in this as well in another small role. The action is fun. Everything about this movie is great. And like I said, this is not considered an underrated by any means, but I just needed to talk about it and I couldn't get it into my top 5. So yeah.
No, I love this movie. I agree with everything that you said. It is infinitely quotable. And this is another one where it's like this is I would definitely qualify this as an action comedy, but this is primarily action with comedy to it, whereas like mine is a comedy with action.
Yes.
But yeah, this is a fun flick.
Never until I saw this movie did I ever think of the term sex as the hunka chunka. Thank you, Sylvester Stallone.
Hunka chunka.
The
exchange of bodily fluids? Gross.
I thought it was a pretty good kisser. What's your next one?
My next one, I was gonna talk about this as my number 1 overrated, but I'll go ahead and talk about so we teased it, and that is The Big Hit. The Big Hit, action comedy again, but this one I think is a lot more action than Grosse Point Blank. This is a movie that kind of came out of nowhere. It's kind of Mark Wahlberg wasn't really an action star yet. He appeared in some films like Fear and some things like that, but
I still have never seen that, by the way.
It's fine. But your supporting cast was, it was Lou Diamond Phillips. It was I completely forget the guy's name.
Is it the African American guy?
No, that's Bokeem Woodbine.
Side quest, real quick. I know this is yours, but I was sitting down with Kimberly. We were watching something, and she was on her phone, and she pulled up like a GIF, and she's like, "Here's this guy who's been in over like 60 films, and you can't remember his name." She goes, "Do you know who this person is?" And I'm like, "Oh my fucking god!" Like if you had not showed me that, I would have I go, "Oh, it's Bo something." And she's like, "You're not gonna pull it, really?" I'm like, "Shut up!" like I literally, if you had talked to me like, "Who's in The Big Hit?" I'd been like, "Oh yeah, Bokeem Woodbine and Mark Wahlberg." I'm like, but now that you like put me on the spot and I couldn't come up with them, like Brian would be so fucking mad at me. And she's like, "I'm gonna tell Brian." I go, "No, you're fucking not." I'm sure I'll tell myself. I was like, I'll tell him myself. But yeah, Bokeem. Yes. So I had to say a little side quest real quick.
And Antonio Sabato Jr. was the other guy I was trying to remember his name.
Oh, okay.
But this is a movie that should have just been just a throwaway kind of, maybe brief theatrical release, but straight to DVD essentially movie.
Like a seamless action film, yeah.
It largely is, but it's so much fucking fun. I love the personality because if you have the whole what you picture as Mark Wahlberg, not the modern Mark Wahlberg so much, but it's kind of like that caricature you see of Mark Wahlberg, like, "Hey, say hello to your mother for me," and he's I'm
like a nice guy kind of thing.
Yeah, he's this nice guy. He wants everybody to like him, but put him in an action setting, and that is this movie. And he's so much fun. He plays it perfectly. He's got he's juggling the two. He's got his girlfriend, Christina Applegate, and then kind of his lover Leela Rashad, who's just using him for his money and everything, and having him balance kind of that home life and the actual action scenes, which are actually quite well done. Lou Diamond Phillips, I think, is the VIP of this movie.
Oh,
Lou Diamond
totally
Phillips,
does.
who at this point I don't think I'd seen since the Young Guns movies, because he kind of gone into this kind of straight to video career largely, except for some small parts and things. And I think he's chewing up the scenery. He's just really playing this so kind of cheesy, but in all the right ways. Everything about this movie works for me. The soundtrack works for me. The dialogue works for me. The action works for me. And it's a movie that I think that if you haven't seen it, you need to see it. Now, no going in that is an action comedy. It is not, if you're going to look for a pure action movie.
And it's young Wahlberg. It's not the Wahlberg you guys know.
Yeah. And he's not quite so serious. And
this
that's
is like underwear model Mark Wahlberg finally learning how to act. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I still, and I know Brian doesn't agree with me, but I still argue that Mark Wahlberg's movie from a couple years ago, The Family Plan, is the unabashedly offshoot sequel to The Big Hit.
Oh, the far inferior one, though.
Oh, yes, I still enjoyed it for what it was.
But
as long as I put my brain like, this is the Mark Wahlberg character from The Big Hit, I enjoy it that much more. Yes, Lou Diamond Phillips is the MVP, but the co-MVP has to go to don't forget about Elliot Gould in this as well.
There's lots more.
But the side MVP of this is the video store clerk guy who keeps like just unabashedly harassing Mark Wahlberg because he's got King Kong Lives. And I still think in my head think about this guy every few weeks for something. I don't know what's like. Oh, little girl, why are you crying? Because I want to see King Kong Lives. King Kong Lives. I never in my life would ever think about the movie King Kong Lives if not for The Big Hit.
I don't think the movie King Kong Lives talks about it as much as this movie does.
Exactly. And I always, when someone's whiny saying, I want this, at work, my brain goes, oh, but I want King Kong Lives. That guy's so good. He's so fucking good. He's one of those guys, like, you don't remember his name. You can look him up in the cast. It's not like he became anything. But he did a fucking great job.
I'm almost certain that we talked about this on Weekend Crusaders. I can't imagine we didn't, unless the days didn't match up or something.
I'm pretty sure we talked about it at some point, if not weekly or weekend.
Anybody watching this channel, if you watching this channel, you probably have at least somewhat similar sensibilities to us.
Yeah,
absolutely should go watch this movie.
We 100% talked about the movie on the show. We have, definitely, and we definitely have done it. Like, I would bet my salary on it that we definitely talked about the big hit. And so you got one and I got one, right?
Yes.
Okay. My last underrated, once again, I think for Brian and I, this is not underrated. In terms of the masses, I feel like a lot of people may not know this. I think they've heard of it. Too many people have not watched this. And this is probably my guilty pleasure action film of the 90s, Desperado. Desperado is, do you consider this underrated or no? I think between you and we don't, but for everybody else.
I think it's another one of those where I think everybody who's seen it loves it, but I think in the modern era, a lot of people have not gone back and watched this movie. I will just say right now, because we're going to discuss it, this is my honorable mention for my top 5.
Okay, so we'll lump it. Desperado, first off, probably one of my favorite action set pieces in the 90s, which is the bar scene. I have the opening song, Los Lobos. I don't know a lick of fucking Spanish, but I can sing that fucking song. And I love like Antonio singing it with, I love that song so much. Salma Hayek, just like Catherine Zeta-Jones, is a fucking smoke show in this. And was this one of her first films too?
This was her first American film.
Yeah. Oh my God, she's amazing in this movie.
Wait, I take that back. She had the same year though, bit part in the Cindy Crawford, William Baldwin movie Fair Game. She was his girlfriend.
But yeah, Antonio Banderas is so fucking good. Antonio Banderas got lucky in the 90s. He got her and Catherine Zeta in the 90s. Dude, you were a lucky motherfucker. But he's so goddamn good in this. I loved how he played this character. I think this is also the first time I ever saw oh God, blanking on his name. Machete.
Danny Trejo.
Yeah, this is the first time I ever saw Danny Trejo. I think the villain is solid in this. I love the kind of grindhouse visuals of this. Cheech Moran is great, but the action and the way he uses his guns, because he's El Mariachi, he basically has a guitar case full of weapons, mainly guns. And the way I feel like Desperado could walk so John Wick could run, because this does what John Wick did, but on a smaller scale. And I think it did such a phenomenal job with this. Like I said, Antonio Banderas, I mean, he's fucking amazing as Zorro, but El Mariachi is one of the coolest fucking characters to me. And I can just go back and watch the bar scene over and over and over again. I love everything about that bar scene. It's so good, and I love Desperado so much. And then they had to go and fucking ruin it. Not ruin Desperado, but like go, hey, let's do a sequel with a far, far inferior sequel in Once Upon a Time in Mexico. You know,
Which
they added
phenomenal. I mean, you're adding in Johnny Depp and things, and Willem Dafoe, I think, was also in there.
Dafoe was in it, yeah.
But it's one of those movies like you're like, oh yes, I want more Desperado. Absolutely, let's make a sequel. But okay, let's make Salma Hayek in like one flashback scene. Otherwise, she's not in the film because apparently she was off doing other things, and the whole movie just does not work the way this first one does. But this first one, like I said, I'm made it my honorable mention for my top 5 because it's not a top 5. It probably wouldn't even necessarily be top 10 for me, but I mean, it's up there for my favorite action movies. But it's the one that like I unabashedly love this movie. And it's another one of those movies that came out of nowhere because it's like Robert Rodriguez, nobody had heard of at this point. I mean, he'd done El Mariachi, which, you know, maybe if you were like in like the movie circles, you'd maybe heard about it. But this is one of those movies, kind of a remake, kind of a sequel to that.
Yeah.
Antonio Banderas, he had shown up in some things before this, but this, as far as a star, as like a movie star, this kind of just announced his arrival. He has so much charisma, so much sex appeal. I mean, and then you put him with people like Salma Hayek, and it's just the two of them together. The chemistry is just off the charts. It's just amazing. But then on the same, and his voice, just his voice alone.
Not yet.
It's just the way he talks is just so like entrancing, and you just buy into everything he says. The action, the Robert Rodriguez action, I think at the time was it was new, and it was something, it was impressive and interesting. And of course, after that, he kind of started doing, you know, his over the top green screen movies, whether it be, you know, the Sin Cities or the Spy Kids and Shark Boy and Lava Girl and Battle Angel Alita. And those, he never nearly lived up to his first film. His first American film is still by a mile Robert Rodriguez's best film. But yeah, everything about this movie, the music, like you already talked about, I can sit down and watch any single scene of this. If it's on TV, if I'm flipping channels, I'm going to stop and watch at least that scene, if not the entire movie. You have people Steve Buscemi showing up for 2 scenes, Quentin Tarantino showing up just to tell basically one joke and get killed. It's just a great film that I love, and it's kind of, you know, the kind of thing I loved in the 90s, where it's something that I was not expecting. I was not looking forward to it. It just came out and won me over instantly.
Oh yeah. Desperados is so fucking good. I love it so much. What was your
one thing? Salma Hayek did have one film before. This is a small part, and we called Me Vida Loca, My Crazy Life. But just I want to correct myself for somebody else.
Was From Dusk Till Dawn was after this, right?
From Dusk Till Dawn was the next year. Yeah, because Robert Rodriguez put her in that after this.
Yeah.
My final underrated, another action comedy. This one again is more comedy, but there's definitely its fair share of action, especially in the big climactic, you know, final scenes of this movie. And I think we've talked about it on the Weekend Crusaders. I don't know. That's The Hard Way. This is a movie with James Woods and Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, I love this movie.
Michael J. Fox is kind of this, you know, pampered actor who, you know, he does like these action films. I forget what the character's called, Nicky something. But he decided, but he wants to do like a serious, gritty film, be taken seriously as an actor, and he's trying to get this part as like this, you know, grizzled cop. And so he basically gets, he goes to this police precinct in New York City, and he's gonna shadow James Woods' character because he saw him on the news. He's like, that's who I want to be. That's who I want to model my character after. But James Woods is James Woods and doesn't have time for Michael J. Fox's fucking actor bullshit. And he's like, doesn't want to be any part of this. And so it's the whole mismatch kind of buddy comedy, buddy cop thing, even though one of them is technically not a cop. He's acting like one. this might be, aside from Back to the Future, my favorite Michael J. Fox role. I just love everything about him in this movie. James Woods is the James Woodsiest he's ever been in this role. He's got a supporting cast with, like LL Cool J is in this. You have the Party Crasher. The villain is played by I'm just blanking on his name. Avatar, the villain, the main
Stephen
guy,
Lang?
Stephen Lang plays the Party Crasher in this movie, and he's hilarious. As this, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm mixing him up with a different movie. It's not Stephen Lang. It's a different
I
guy.
don't think Stephen Lang was in this.
No, I'm sorry. That's my fault. I mixed him up with a different movie. But yeah, this is a movie that's it's funny, but the action sequences work. Like I said, there's a whole there's a couple different shootouts in the movie, and then the whole finale scene is like where he's hanging from his own billboard for his movie.
That's the most memorable thing to me. Like by today's standards, they would have CGI'd that shit. They wouldn't have taken the post. They wouldn't have made that whole fucking big ass billboard. They wouldn't have done that.
Well, that's the thing is the 90s. We didn't talk much on the beginning
of
the show.
Stephen Lang. It is Stephen Lang
in general. What's that?
It's Stephen Lang.
Oh, it is Stephen Lang.
Yeah, it is Stephen Lang.
Okay. You know what? I'm mixing it up with there's a different guy who plays a villain in the movie Cuffs, and I always get these two mixed up. Anyway, which is another movie that almost made my list, by the way. But that one's a little bit more comedy. That's basically Christian Slater, basically Ferris Bueller, but in an action movie, kind of. But what was I talking about? Oh, you were talking about the CGI thing, and that's something about the 90s. Is like the 90s, because digital effects were kind of just coming into their own, after Jurassic Park and these movies. And so they still had a good balance of we're going to use mostly practical effects. Occasionally we'll use some CG for something. But then we got in the 2000s where they kind of over-relied on CG when most of the movies weren't really ready to use it properly or convincingly. But that's a whole tangent I won't get into. But The Hard Way, if you haven't seen it, hilarious movie. Check it out.
Nick Lang was the character for
Nick Lang. That's what it was.
Yeah, Nick Lang. But yeah, when I think of Hard Way, I immediately think of the final set piece with them fighting on Michael J. Fox's face and the big ass cigarette kind of thing. It's such a great set piece at the end of that movie. But I enjoyed it.
Very, very young Christina Ricci as.
If you go back to the actual cast, it's like young Mos Def, Christina Ricci, Penny Marshall's in it as well. Delroy Lindau's the captain. Yeah. It's got a great cast. Maybe in the 90s they weren't like anything special, but you go by today's like, holy shit.
Yeah, Penny Marshall was his like agent or manager or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so now we go to our faves. We're gonna piss people off because, like I said, the 90s is so fucking full of blockbuster that I'm sure that there are 15 movies that we're not going to talk about.
If we did 20, we'd probably include everything you guys want us to talk about.
There is an iconic 90s action film that is not on my list. If it was a top 10, it would be. I'm doing 6 because I have an honorable mention. This list is soul crushing. I don't know how many times we have to explain this. Because I feel like the top 2 are the obvious top 2, but then it's like everything after is just like, oh my god, I gotta. It's hurtful. I'm gonna lump my honorable mention and 5 together. Okay. So do you want to go ahead and go with?
I already my honorable mention was Desperado, so go ahead.
Okay, all right. So my honorable mention and my 5, they kind of go hand in hand. So that's why I kind of lumped them together. I could have just said, hey, those guys are number 5, and then here's another, but I didn't want to cheat for Brian. I didn't want to cheat. So I kind of also got away with that with Three Musketeers and Zorro. My number 5. There's a man. Brian already mentioned him earlier in Overrated. He was
a Steven Seagal movie. Good. I'm glad it's a major.
Yeah, exactly. This man in the mid 90s to 2000s could not miss. At least in my eyes, could not miss. Now, he did miss for Brian because this is like number 1 overrated. But this guy just was the epitome of cool, and he's not your typical action star. But god damn it, did he not have 2 of the best, most fun action films of the 90s in my eyes? What?
1. The other one is overrated.
I love both of them. I love both. No, 3 if you count. 3 if you count, you're overrated. So for me, my 5 and honorable mention is The Rock and Con Air. Mr. Nick Cage, buddy. I love, and then you add Face Off in the mix as well. I love both these fucking films. Nick Cage just could not miss in the late 90s for me. The Rock, Nick Cage with my namesend, because I was named after Sean Connery. I thought they were great in this movie. The rest of the cast in this movie is great. Michael Bay doing Michael Bay things. Granted, you watch it now and you start to pick apart the Michael Bay-isms, but this was before anyone really.
Well, because they weren't Michael Bay-isms yet. They were just
exactly. They're not Michael Bay-isms at that time, but you watch it like, oh, it's such a Michael Bay thing, like the gay barber, like. I just want to know if you like your haircut. It's like
just the shots and editing and stuff. You watch it now, you're like, okay, he uses that in every single movie he does.
360 camera spin while they're looking off in the distance, kind of thing. This week, Michael Biehn has got such a small role, but he's so fucking good in the small role he's got. Ed Harris is such a great bad guy. Tony Todd is so great in this movie. Oh god, I'm blanking on the other actor's name. I always think it's Michael Shannon, but it's not Michael Shannon. Crazy redhead guy.
I'm not sure who you're referring to.
He's the one who gets the green thing in his mouth. Like Nick Cage punches it up into his mouth and he dies that way. He's the unhinged army dude. And I always think it's Michael Shannon, and it's not Michael Shannon. But he's a no-name. Well, he's not a no-name actor, but he's not as big as I think he is. Like I always really liked him. But The Rock is so damn good. Them breaking into Alcatraz to try to save hostages. Nick Cage has got some phenomenal lines. Him and Sean Connery's chemistry is great through the movie. Like I said, some of the lines, your best. You know, losers always whine about doing their best. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen. Such a great fucking line. I love The Rock so goddamn much. And then you follow it up with Con Air. And Con Air, phenomenal cast. John Malkovich, John Cusack, who we already mentioned. Dave Chappelle, before really people knew who Dave Chappelle was. Oh my god, I blanked on his name again. Machete. Fucking Danny Trejo. Ving Rhames. The cast goes on and on and on. And it's so fun, and it just Steve Buscemi again. Such a great cast. It's more. And both these films, are they super action heavy to a point? Yes, but it's more the writing and the cast is so strong through this that makes these movies top tier action films for me. I still can sing the entire small song that Malkovich sings about the FBI agent when he kills him. I'm not going to do it right now, but it's great. I love both these movies so much, and it's like trying to make me decide between, you know, children. Not that I have children, but which one I love more between these two. I love Con Air and The Rock so much, so I had to put them together, and it became my other honorable mention. Should I have honorable mentioned another film, which I know once we get through, you're like, really? This isn't on yours? Yes, I probably should have, but The Rock and Con Air, they're right. I love them both so much.
The Rock I enjoy. It's not a top 5 film or anything for me, but I really do enjoy The Rock, and this is his second film, Michael Bay's second film after Bad Boys, which I obviously love. Con Air, it has some fun parts to it. I think it's Con Air is kind of, I don't know. I almost think if Michael Bay had made Con Air, it could have been a better film, because it seems like somebody was.
You kind of almost want to believe in your head that he did make both the movies.
Yeah, Simon West, Dominic Sena. I don't remember who directed this. I think it was Simon West. But it definitely feels like a Michael Bay film, but it's not. It
feels like it, yeah.
And I feel like it's like somebody trying to do Michael Bay who can't do quite as well. Nick Cage has the fucking
Simon West
mullet from hell and the fucking bad accent.
Why didn't you put the bonnet back in the box?
It's like, it is an enjoyable watch. I mean, even at the time, I remember watching a lot with friends. We'd sit around and watch the movie, and I enjoyed it. But I'm not going to pretend it's a good movie. But
I will argue both these movies to the end of time. I love these movies, just like Face Off. I can understand why you don't like Face Off, but I will defend these 3 films. These 3, and then you add Gone in 60 Seconds. Those 4 movies don't even fucking come at me. I will defend those 4 movies for Nick Cage over anything else. There's no other Nick Cage movies in my eyes. There's those 4. He's good in a lot of other things, but these are his 4 best films, and I will never divert from that. Ever. And I love Unbearable.
Weight of Massive.
Yeah, I love that movie. But those these are four of the peak Nick Cage four.
My number 5. I'm not sure again if these are really rated for me.
They're not. I'm just going off my
Yeah.
list.
Is Twister, the original Twister, obviously.
Yeah.
This is it's an action movie. There's not gunfights. There's not. Well, I guess there are some explosion. But it's absolutely
There are
an action movie.
explosions.
Yeah, as I said, there are explosions. There's car crashes. It's definitely action to the movie. It's just a different kind of action. This is weather action essentially.
Yeah.
Twister is a movie that I remember seeing the teaser trailer before it came out, where it's like kind of more an atmospheric thing, and the letters swirl around. You see that all you see is that tractor tire coming, like basically hit the camera. I remember seeing that going, "What the fuck is this? This is gonna be awesome!" It's like with special effects they have nowadays, because before this they would have just had wind machines and I don't know, bad matte paintings. I don't know what the fuck they would do for a tornado before this. But now in the post Jurassic Park world, where ILM can make basically anything they want with computers, it's like they can make it look real. And if you watch it today, it holds up. It holds up today if you watch it.
I mean, we watched
a little bit in the high def. If you're watching in 4K, you can kind of see a little bit of the seams, but it still looks phenomenal. It's totally convincing, and still use plenty of practical effects. It's majorly practical effects, except for the actual tornado in the sky. Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, two people that you'd never think of as like the leads of a film, much less what is essentially an action film. They are great in this, and that's the kind of cast I've always said on this show, on any of our shows, that I like. I like the kind of second tier actors. Yes, the big superstars, the Tom Cruises, the Arnolds, the whatever, they're good to watch. But I love watching kind of that second tier of actors who aren't superstars but are great, have great personalities, great charisma. To watch them star in a movie, that's what I love to see. And this one, top to bottom, you have those two. You have Carrie Elways, you have Philip Seymour Hoffman, you have Ellen Ruck, you have so many more. I'm not going to go down the whole list, but it's a great supporting cast. It's so much fun to watch. The score by Mark Mancina, I think, is a phenomenal score to it. And it keeps you riveted beginning to end. And I think that it's fun, it's impressive. Everything about this movie I loved.
I think we have talked about Twister at least 5 times on the show.
For good reason.
For good reason. We've talked about it on the Weekend Crusaders or Week Crusaders. We talked about it when Twisters was on its way out, and we talked about it during Twisters when we did the review for that. Yeah. This is a movie that Brian and I both love. And if we're talking about our,
and like you said, you always use it as a demo reel because it's so impressive on a technical scale. Yeah,
exactly. And like I said, this is why the 90s is so painful. Because if I think about my favorite movies from the 90s, Twister is definitely one of them. But if I'm having to rank them, I don't know where Twister ends up. But it is, when I think of favorite films of the 90s, it's there. But the 90s is so fucking amazing that it might be 15 or 17. But in my brain, it's one of my favorites of all time. But it could be that low, and they'll be like, well, it must not be that great at 17. No, that's just how fucking great the 90s are, is that it can be 17, and in my brain be considered like my number 2, but it's my 17th ranked. This did not end up in my top 5, because once again, while it is action heavy, I was thinking more action explosions for my picks. But yeah, Twisters is just, it's fucking insane how great it is. It's both our very first DVDs. We both mentioned that when we were talking about this. For like when
it came out on launch day. It was the only new release on launch day. Yeah.
Yes, Twister was the very first one for all of us. I think Blue and I both still have the actual DVD still from that time when it came out, because it was that little flap door opening.
Yep.
Yes, that literally was the most fragile DVD case possible, and it's still in great condition. I've lost track of how many times I've watched Twister. I love Twister so goddamn much. My number 4 is another movie. Let's put it this way. Of all my top 6, 5 of these I know Brian loves. The other one I think you think is overrated, but you didn't put it in your overrated. But I think you think it's fine. I think you think people blow it out of proportion. But everyone else you love. So everything I'm going to say here outside of that one, you'd be like, yeah. Do I think they're on your list? No, because I think you're going to put other things higher. But my number 4, we would get shit on back in our movie trivia days with our group, because we put this one on a fucking pedestal over everything else, and it always pissed off my tag team partner. Even though he loves it too, but he just, he's an old school person. I am not a big fan of this genre, but when I think of this genre, there's one movie above all else, and that's Tombstone. Tombstone, which I don't think is on your list at all.
It's not on my list, but I do enjoy the movie.
Tombstone is such a great Western. It's my favorite Western. Harder They Fall is like a hard number 2 right behind it. But Tombstone is so good at doing like the shootouts on top of the phenomenal cast, on top of the amazing performance of Val
This is
Kilmer.
amazing. You go 30 names down on the cast list and still be hitting top talent.
When we just talked about how great Bill Paxton is, and he's literally like probably the least relevant in the film.
Right.
That's saying a lot. Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp is amazing. Val Kilmer is iconic as Doc Holliday. Like I said, the cast list all the way down. The quotes of this movie will forever live in infamy, mainly Doc Holliday's casting. But Kurt Russell at the very end of the movie, when he goes full on vengeance, is amazing. This movie is the epitome of what a Western should be. It's not long and drawn out. It gets right to the point. It knows when to live in a scene, and it knows when to fucking bring something to it to liven it up. It's got great villains. It's got good. Is it Heston that does the voiceover?
Charlton Heston.
Yeah, it's Heston. It's got great voiceover from Charlton Heston. Tombstone to me is Westerns. There were some really good Westerns in the 90s because you had like The Quick and the Dead and Unforgiven and Young Guns and all that stuff. But to me, Tombstone is the benchmark of the 90s, and that's why it was in my top tier.
Yeah, I've never been like as completely over the top as some people. I won't say over the top. I've not loved it as much as some people, but it is a very enjoyable movie, and it's easily one of the top 5 Westerns of all time, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you there. My next movie, you don't love nearly as much as I do. I actually just looked on Letterboxd. You gave it 3 stars. But it's just one of my favorites of the 90s, and honestly, of all time. It's not like a great movie, but it's just one of the most fun movies for me, and that is The Last Boy Scout.
I do need to do. It does deserve a rewatch. I have not watched it probably in 20 years, so I could watch it and completely change my thought process on it. I will say that before we go too far. So continue.
Aside from Die Hard, it's probably my favorite Bruce Willis movie. Damon Wayans is perfect in this movie, where when he was making more feature films, a lot of times he was doing his usual comedy thing. Here, he definitely has comedic lines, but he's playing the role far more serious. He's like this athlete who is got drug problems, and now he's kind of. Both these guys are kind of like down and out, and they're kind of the underdogs of the story. It's directed by Tony Scott, who's done everything, from like Top Gun movies to Enemy of the State and so many other movies. But I think that his style worked well with this, especially when combined with, and this most important thing, the script by Shane Black. Shane Black, a lot of people know, is one of my favorite writers, just because he has my same comedic sensibility, sense of humor. He has such great dialogue. It's so much fun. Obviously, we saw it in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Nice Guys. We got to direct his own films. This is the closest thing to a Shane Black film that he didn't direct before he started directing. It's a movie that, it's not trying to be high art. It knows that what it is trying to be is fun. And so the action beats all completely work. The comedy beats all completely work. It's full of fun characters, even ones like, Taylor Negron, who's just there for like a single scene. Bruce Willis is, he's being Bruce Willis. But this is back when he actually looked like he cared, but B also looked like he was having fun. Even he wasn't laughing out loud, because it's not a comedy, but he's like straight face delivery in this dialogue. But his one-liners are so much fun, and this one has a surprising amount of action, and it's just I don't know. It's a movie that I just love, and it's a movie that I watch probably at least once a year. And maybe it's just my love for Shane Black. Maybe it's just because I love Bruce Willis back when he was in his prime. But yeah, I like this.
Bruce Willis is in his zone when he plays characters that are down on their luck.
Yeah.
McClane is the same way. Corbin Dallas from Fifth Element. They're guys that are on their last leg, or they've lost something, and they're kind of in the I don't fucking care anymore, kind of thing. That's his wheelhouse, and this is one of those movies where he does that. I don't think I ever watched this movie past. I've watched parts, obviously, because it's always on somewhere, but from beginning to end, I don't think I've ever watched this movie past the first time.
Wow.
Then I said that's probably why it's 3 stars, because if I'm thinking back on it, I don't have enough of a logical memory to think. At most it's probably 3.5 if I think about it now. But I think it deserves a definite rewatch from me. I do remember as a kid when this came out, that opening scene was horrifying for me.
Oh yeah, the football player ain't life.
Yes. And him pulling a gun out and shooting while he's running downfield. That was terrifying for me as a kid. Nothing really scares me, but like that was something like that actually could happen. Like Freddy Krueger or Jason, like
something like that hasn't happened, honestly.
Exactly, especially with them just being on drugs. That was one of the things that was terrifying to me, because that was real and it was raw. And so that was always a hard one for me. That's probably why I never really went back and rewatched it, because like that scene just always kind of messed with me. Oh god, is it Halle Berry who's like
one of her first films?
Yeah, like so she's in it, and she's like, isn't she Damon Wayans' sister or something?
No, she's the girlfriend that gets murdered.
Oh, that's right. Like I said, not enough muscle memory for me to remember the whole movie for what it is.
She basically, because Damon Wayans had basically had gotten kicked out of the NFL or whatever their equivalent of the NFL was, and she's trying to help him get a job back because she has something that can basically blackmail these higher ups as well as some politicians, and so she's going to use that to help him get his job back, and she gets killed because of it. And that kind of brings about the whole events of the movie. Yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, this is definitely one of those that deserves a rewatch, and I probably will appreciate it a lot more now as an adult than I did. Was it 96? So I was 11.
91.
91. No, fuck. Then I was 6. So yeah.
Well, you didn't say when it first came out then.
Yeah. No. Okay. It was 91. Yeah. So definitely this deserves a rewatch, and it will probably get a higher score out of me when I see it again. But yeah. My number 3 is the one that I know that you're just kind of like. Probably will eye roll when I pick it, because this is one of my favorite films of the 90s. All these are favorites of us, obviously. But this one, I immediately, like when I thought of 90s action, my top 2 were like instant, like, well, yeah, that. And then afterwards, I was like, okay. And then I saw this, I'm like, this is going on the list. It has to. And it's going to go right there at number 3. Starship Troopers. I know how you feel about Starship Troopers.
They're remaking that one too.
Oh god, and I don't know if I there's just, it's not gonna have the campiness.
Well, but also from what I understand, I don't want to get on a whole tangent, but from what I understand, they're remaking it, but it's going to be more. It's one of those things that's going back to the original book, be more true to the book.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot more like that. It's probably not going to have the same kind of cheesy Paul Verhoeven humor to it either. So.
No, exactly, which is why I don't think it's going to be as good. Starship Troopers is peak 90s. It's so fucking good. Casper Van Dien, Dina Meyer, who I had the biggest crush on.
Who hasn't fucking aged. I saw actually a photo just like.
Oh no, she's still acting in this stuff. She's gorgeous.
Yeah, there was some photo of like, I think there was a convention or something, of a reunion of Casper Van Dien, Denise Richards, and Dina Meyer, and 2 of them look like they definitely look like they've aged 30 years. Yeah. She looks almost the same. It's amazing.
Oh, she's an endless beauty. She's like Diane Lane. She gets older and she still looks just fucking breathtaking. Denise Richards, this was kind of like this was like her introduction for the most part to most people, and then she ended up doing Wild Things and then went to the stratosphere for that. Oh god, I'm blanking on the other guy. I only knew him because he was on like Saved by the Bell and like I think like in like soap operas. You know, the douchebag that Denise Richards dumps him for. He was like the captain. He gets brained at the end of the movie.
I don't remember who played him. I do remember
he was pretty 90s boy.
I remember he's in there too, right? And Neil Patrick Harris.
Neil Patrick Harris, when he was everyone just knew him as Doogie Howser, and he was in that. Jake Busey's great in the movie. Michael Ironside.
Yes,
he's great in the movie. The creatures look fantastic. It is brutal. Oh god, I'm blanking on the other actor's name. He was in Major League 2. He was the catcher. He was kind of like the dumb hick, like Southern hick guy. He's got a small part in this. He's great in the movie as well.
Flanagan's in it? Well, I don't remember that.
Yes. This movie is so, I don't want to say it's raw, but it doesn't. It very is much like RoboCop. It's gonna be gory. It's not gonna hide it. It's gonna make you see everything, which is why I love RoboCop and I love Starship Troopers. It's probably the two. I'll say is the director's name. I'm gonna fuck it up.
Paul Verhoeven.
Verhoeven. Probably my two favorite films of his. I love the politicalness. Would you like to know more? Kind of thing. Like it's
Over the top. Yeah.
It's so satirically over the top acting, but it just works for this movie. The sequels are not worth watching. They're straight to VHS. Don't even waste your time. This is definitely a one movie only watch. They just came out with a video game for it, and I'm like, oh my god, this is I want to play the video game. If the video game is even like 10% of what the movie is, I'm going to enjoy playing it. I love Starship Troopers so fucking much. I know Brian's not crazy about it, but it is one of those films that I feel like, once again, much like you said with Twister, no big names. By today's idea, Neil Patrick Harris, but Neil Patrick Harris was Doogie fucking Howser.
Well, and this is even worse because it was like he had done Doogie Howser years before,
and then he went away.
He was basically, I think he was doing some Broadway stuff. Is all he was doing.
Yeah.
Era. Yeah.
I mean, you had Dina Meyer, no name. Denise Richards, no name. Casper Van Dien, no name. Jake Busey, I think people knew because of his dad, but he wasn't really like a
the
big
biggest
name
names in it
actor.
were Michael Ironside and Clancy Brown.
Exactly. No, this is not a. These are CD level actors at the time, and they all come out and they give 110% of what they're trying to do. Special effects wise, looks great, and you cared so much about. Oh, dude, I still get mad with Dina Meyer's character. That still pisses me off to this day. Also, someone dropped some knowledge, and I'm sure I've read this before, but I just refreshed me. Is that there's one part of the movie, like, because the whole Casper Van Dien, there's like this big meteor that like crashes into Buenos Aires, and that's what causes like Casper Van Dien to like not leave the army and stuff like that. Apparently, there's a meteor that's nearing Denise Richards and the other dude when they're on the ship, and he divert it, and that gets diverted to Buenos Aires. So they effectively are the reason why the shit gets down, because they were flirty and they weren't paying attention because they were flirting with each other, and they caused a meteor to go off course. That was a bug meteor, and it starts the whole downward spiral. I don't. That's not 100%. I just know I saw someone read that. I was like, motherfucker, that bitch did everything wrong. Yeah, I love Starship Troopers so much.
Yeah, I think the other guy's name you're looking. I think you're looking at Patrick Muldoon.
Yes.
Looking at him, I don't really. I recognize the face, but I don't really know him from much else.
Like I said, he was in Saved by the Bell for I think 5-something episodes. He was like the guy who got between Kelly and Zach. That wasn't Slater.
So he always plays the other guy.
Yes, he is. He does.
My next one up is probably the least action oriented of my top 5. I mean, there's definitely action in it. It's considered an action film, but it really is a drama. It's a chase, but it's a whole movie long chase, and that is The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford. This is a movie that I never watched the original TV series. I'd heard of the original TV series, didn't know anything about it. They said they're making a movie of it. I'm like, who's going to care about a fucking movie about this? Was it 60s TV show, The Fugitive? I'm like, whatever. It's got Harrison Ford, so I'm going to see it because it's fucking Han Solo and Indiana Jones. You got to go see it. It's Harrison Ford. And I went and saw this, and it was probably one of the best kind of action drama thrillers that I had seen in years at that point. Harrison Ford is perfect for the role. Tommy Lee Jones, obviously Oscar-winning performance. He is, again, chewing up the scenery, having so much fun, but it actually makes sense in this role as opposed to like Under Siege, where he was playing a whole different movie than everybody else is in the movie. His whole team of U.S. Marshals is chasing him. It's a smart movie. It takes place in Chicago, so I always love watching a good Chicago movie where I can see all the sites that I recognize and stuff. So this is just a movie that, and I think got nominated for Best Picture. I think Harrison Ford, I think, got nominated for Best Actor. So it's a movie that, it was kind of a thinking man's action film, as they call it. Not that I have any problem with mindless, fun action. Obviously, Last Boy Scout was my last pick. But I also enjoy movies like this that can, on a filmmaking level and on an acting level, everything are every bit as good. And it all comes together to just make a great film, which it's kind of on the borderline. Is it considered an action movie? Some people wouldn't, but it listed as it here, so I'm going to include it.
This is another one like Last Boy Scout that probably deserves a rewatch for me because I remember all the high points, but I probably don't remember the movie from beginning to end like I do most films. So this is definitely one of those that
I
deserves
think
a
you should
rewatch.
rewatch. I think you'll realize how great it is.
I really enjoyed U.S. Marshals.
And this is so much better than U.S. Marshals. I
know
U.S. Marshals, but it's like the DVD version of Fugitive.
I know, but it's one of those. It's like I remember that one because I remember watching that one. I might have been too young to watch The Fugitive, not because I wasn't allowed to watch it. It's because it didn't pique my interest at that age. Even though it had Harrison Ford, it didn't look like a fun Harrison Ford movie for me when I was younger. I probably still see. I still never seen Witness.
Oh yeah, especially if you're younger audiences. That's why I said this is kind of an adult action movie because it's not. It's not all about the fun. It's not Harrison Ford being Indiana Jones or Han Solo. It's basically a drama with action elements to it.
Yeah. All right. You have what, 2 left, and I've got 2 left.
Yes.
Okay. I would, man, like I said, the 90s is so crazy that while I think my top 2 are your top 2, they might not even be ranked in your top 2. That's how crazy.
I think one is definitely the same. I think the other one, it's a matter of I don't know if we weeded them out the same when you were trying to narrow down the list.
I think my number 2 you weeded out because of sci-fi.
Probably then, yes.
So that's probably what it is. And your number 2, you're probably wondering why the fuck it wasn't in my top 5. It's because it's probably like in my top 10, just not there. But my number 2 is considered, I'm not saying it is, but it definitely is up there as probably one of, if not the best sequel in movie history.
Oh, okay. This is on my list. So yeah.
Okay. And that's Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Absolutely.
Is this your 2 or your 1 or?
I had it at, well, like I said, they aren't really ranked, but I had it at 1. I had it 1.
Okay. Well, wow. Then mine. I thought when you said.
I think I weeded out your number 1.
Oh, which is also sci-fi to a point. Yeah. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I think Terminator is good. I don't think Terminator is great. I think it's solid for what it is, but I don't love Terminator. I fucking love Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Everything that worked for Terminator worked on Judgment Day times 1,000.
I can't think of a movie that has a bigger jump in quality, enjoyment, everything from one movie to its sequel. I don't think there's anything that makes as big a jump as this.
I don't, and I'm sure there's an argument somewhere to be had for that, but right now I can't think of it. Terminator 2 Judgment Day hit on every spectrum that you want to hit your marks on, in terms of cast, action, story, emotional weight, everything that Terminator 2 did better, more efficiently, with a bigger budget, better casting, better story. Everything about Terminator 2 Judgment Day works. It is one of the best films, if not in the top tier caliber of best films of the whole 1990s. Not even in action. I'm talking about every genre, period. God, what's his fucking name? T-1000, Patrick.
Robert Patrick.
Robert, I wanted to go Jason. I'm like, that's not right. Robert Patrick was a nobody, and he will forever be the T-1000. He's done great things since. I love him as an actor, but he is forever the T-1000. Linda Hunt, I thought she was solid in Terminator. She is iconic. She's iconic in Judgment Day. Schwarzenegger, obviously we talk about in terms of trailers giving away the hook. This gave away the hook, and it still didn't take anything away from the movie. Everything about this movie, visually, special effects, sound design, set pieces, there is never a scene in this movie that doesn't hit a 10 out of 10. And it is one of the best films ever made.
Yeah, this is a top 10 of all films, much less of action films, much less of action films of the 90s. Like I said, I enjoyed Terminator. It was a great world building, great characters, great ideas. Obviously, it was James Cameron's first real directorial feature. It was, the special effects of the time were limited. The budget of the time was limited. So it was a great foundation. But then when they went to Terminator 2, everything is just like 1,000, like you said, 1,000 times better. The special effects were just mind blowing. I mean, there's a few kind of landmarks of special effects. There's kind of the Abyss kind of was the first time they were like really using James Cameron started using kind of digital effects. Then Terminator 2 blew things away in terms of using CGI, and then of course then you go on to Jurassic Park, and then Phantom Menace with creating whole CGI characters, and then Lord of the Rings. But Terminator 2 is kind of that point where they're like, okay, look what CGI can do, and it just blew people's minds. I mean, this is just 2 years before Jurassic Park. The cast talked about it. Edward Furlong is a little
whiny, bitchy.
Definitely the weakest actor of the bunch. But he's playing a 12-year-old kid, and he plays that role well. That's
whiny,
what an 11, 12-year-old kid would sound like.
Exactly. He's whiny and annoying, but he's playing the role perfect for what it's needed. Yeah, he's playing the role to perfection. He's just not enjoyable to watch on screen because of what he has to do. It's nothing against him. He's doing everything perfect. We just don't want to watch him.
Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger is great. Like you said, they kind of gave away the twist of this Terminator being the good guy, and there's this different one after him as the bad guy. There's a clear moment in the movie in that hallway scene where it's supposed to be, oh my gosh, we're shocked and surprised that Arnold's the one protecting him. Even though it wasn't a surprise, though, you still love it. You just go with it. There's not enough I can say about the action sequences of this movie. They're so well done. If I had any criticism of them, it'd be a commentary more on the time, is that there's some real obvious stunt doubles in several scenes, but that's just nitpicking because it doesn't take you out of the movie. You're still just as entranced by this film. The story is phenomenal. This is probably, like I said, I had this at my number 1, but even though my things aren't really ranked, but it is the best action film of the 90s, one of the best action films of all time, one of the best films period of all time.
So then clearly we don't have the same last one.
No.
So what mine is just based off of, it wasn't Terminator, it was this one. Yes. So what is your, I want to say yours is the one I'm thinking of, but I could be once again totally wrong. Because
again, like you said, we're trying to narrow down our lists. We had to find excuses to get rid of things. And while Terminator 2, obviously I could say, oh, that's more of a sci-fi film, I left it in because it's so action based. The action scenes are what you remember about this movie.
Yeah.
Your other one, I thought, it's sci-fi thriller, but it has some action. So I'm like, I'll use that as an excuse to make another open spot in my top 5. So the last one of my top 5 action films of the 90s, anyone who knows me knows I love this movie, and that is Speed.
Okay, yeah, that's the one I thought. It didn't hit my list. Right outside of it, I was like, you're gonna get mad that I put Con Air there and not Speed.
No, Speed, I love. I still remember the first time I saw this movie. They had a sneak preview, a week before it opened, and I went and saw this movie, and I was just blown away by it. I remember in that bus jumping scene, the silence in the audience, as the thing was in the air and then it lands, people are cheering out loud at this thing. This is Jan de Bons, who directed Twister. It's his second film on my list. This is Mark Mancina, who also did the score for this movie, who did it for Twister. I love his score for this movie. It just amps everything up, and you feel like you're in the moment, and it's kind of that driving music that keeps it going. Keanu Reeves, like we said, had done mostly comedies and some small parts in dramas and things before this, and then he did Point Break, which kind of made people say, oh, this guy could be an action star. So they put him in this role, and this just solidifies it. This is he can carry an action movie, which then of course paves the way for the future of the Matrix at the end of the same decade, and then John Wick and all these other things he's done. Sandra Bullock coming off of Demolition Man. They're like, oh, this person's got our attention. Which, by the way, again, this role in this was almost Ellen DeGeneres, which would have sucked, especially in retrospect.
Well, same thing with Laura Petty in Demolition Man. It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah. Well, Laura Petty, I think, could have worked. I think she was the right person. I still love Tight Girl. I almost put it as an underrated.
No, I do, but for the role that Bullock played in Demolition Man, I don't think Laura Petty would have hit that right.
Apparently, she didn't think so either. She just fucking walked off the set and quit. Yeah. But Sandra Bullock, I think, was perfect for this role, and this is the movie that definitely made her become a star. After this, when they started putting her in starring roles, the next year she was in While You Were Sleeping, and then her career went on from there. The action scenes you talk about the whole movie. Well, 2/3 of the movie takes place on a bus. There's an elevator sequence at the beginning, then most of the movie's on the bus, and then at the end there's kind of the subway.
The subway train, yeah.
But 2/3 of this movie takes place on a bus, and how do they make that interesting? But they do. It's like there's nail-biting, suspenseful action scenes. You have your great cast of mostly character actors as the bus
Alan Ruck
passengers.
again.
What's that?
Alan Ruck again.
Yeah, Alan Ruck being the primary one. There are other people on there, but he's kind of the only name you're really going to know. But everybody else kind of background actors. But they all like Gigantor Ortiz has great personality to him as well. You have the cops. You have Joe Morton, who was also just in Terminator 2. You have Johnson McGinley, I think is there. No, not John. I forget the guy's name. But anyway, his second one. Jeff Daniels, Jeff Daniels had a phenomenal. This is the year Jeff Daniels had this and Dumb and Dumber in the same year. That's got to be the pinnacle of his career. I mean, I love him in Newsroom and things like that, but this, as far as films, was the pinnacle of his career with two roles that couldn't be more different. Yeah, this is a movie that I went into with zero expectations, if not maybe almost negative expectations, because like it's the bus movie. You know, how exciting can an action movie takes place on a bus? But it just blew me away. Yeah.
And once again, you add another iconic villain in Dennis Hopper.
Well, Dennis Hopper, yeah.
Oh, you didn't even mention Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper was like the go-to villain. I mean, he did this and he did Waterworld and he did a few other movies, but he just like was embracing that villain role. And was it cheesy? Yes, but it was cheesy in all the right ways, and it matched the tone of this movie. Yeah, there's nothing about this movie I don't love, and I'm glad they never made a sequel to it because it would have just ruined it.
Yes, there was definitely no sequel of Willem Dafoe as the villain. Yeah, Speed's iconic, and like I said, I'm glad you at least picked it, because I had a feeling that if we went through this whole thing and Speed was not mentioned, then we would catch a lot of hell for that. So I'm glad you brought up Speed.
There's no way this wasn't making the list.
Yeah, I was like, I hope he's like, I know my number one. I was like, if he picks my number one, I was like, we're gonna catch a lot of shit for not talking about Speed. Going to my number one is gonna be the other movie.
Your number one would absolutely is absolutely an action movie of the 90s. It's one of my favorite films of all time. Your number one, again, I was looking for excuses to take some off the list to make room for more movies.
Luckily enough, once again, we split it up to the point where they're both gonna get talked about, because you got Speed and my number one is, of course, The Matrix. Once again, Keanu Reeves.
Okay.
What'd you say I was gonna say?
I thought you were going Jurassic Park as an action movie.
Nope. At Jurassic Park, I go completely sci-fi with it.
No, but absolutely love Matrix.
Obviously, you know how much I love Jurassic Park. No, Matrix is the other one. It's, once again, Keanu Reeves tops the charts on 1 and 2. Just like if we were talking 70s, I wouldn't have put Jaws down either. That's more of a thriller horror thing. I wouldn't have put that as more of action. The Matrix is, once again, it's the epitome of the end of the 90s. It launched. It did so well what it did that the 2000s became annoying, because everyone kept trying to do what the Matrix did, and not in a good way. Bullet time became a thing. The stop midair, 360 spin. Everything about the Matrix.
It was parodied to death, but also just movies that were trying to
to emulate it.
Emulate it, yeah.
The Matrix launched a new type of like gung fu. Is the term a lot of people use, with actual kung fu used as well. And it did it so well that everyone tried to copy it, and they just could not do it. Like I said, Keanu Reeves in both of our top films. Yours launched his career. Mine reinvigorated his career the first time, because he started to kind of become more the rom-com guy, not really much action. And when he did action, it wasn't anything super great. And then here came The Matrix, was a regular sci-fi movie. No one was super, anything of a Hugo Weaving, not really a huge name. Carrie-Anne Moss, not really a huge name.
The Wachowskis were nobody. Like the biggest name besides Keanu in this is probably Joey Pants.
Exactly. And or even Lawrence Fishburne to a point.
Oh yeah, Fishburne, yeah.
And here once again, all these people who just came in and they just started obliterating the cast and everything like that. And the action is shot beautifully for what it is. It had a really in-depth story to it that worked incredibly well. Hugo Weaving is a phenomenal villain as Agent Smith. Like I said, it relaunched Keanu's career the first time. The second time was John Wick in the 2000s and 2010s. Everything about The Matrix worked incredibly well. There's not really much to talk about it. I mean, it's all just like with Judgment Day and Speed. It's all on the paper. Just watch the movie. You get it. You understand it. And like I said, if we had gone through this whole thing and Judgment Day, Matrix, and Speed weren't talked about, we're gonna get shit for it.
The only other thing I would add on that I think deserves to be talked about on this specifically is both the score and the soundtrack of the songs. I think in this movie they do so much to like just submerge you in this world and make it what it is. And again, in the score as well is something that, like the special effects in the 2000s, was just imitated to death, and it never worked as well as it did in the Matrix, because it was kind of, you know, this techno noir that worked, but it also kind of set you in kind of this otherworldly sci-fi world where it kind of wasn't your own world. It was kind of this heightened version of it, which, you know, like the Matrix is. And it's just, this is a movie that came out of nowhere. It's like you said, nobody'd heard of the director. I mean, they'd done Bound before this, so they were known as like these, you know, indie directors that were up and coming. But they weren't. Nobody expected them to basically completely change the landscape of sci-fi and action films, and which this absolutely did. It's the epitome of cool, not just in the way they dress, but in the way the action, the way it's directed, everything about this
sound
movie
design.
So impressive.
The lobby scene alone is probably one of the best shot action sequences with sound and visuals in the whole 1990s.
Yeah, and it never got duplicated again. I mean, they had their three sequels, which none of them are ones that I file as sequels that don't exist. They aren't that bad, but none of them live up to as perfect as the first.
And they never were. We were all excited for it, but it was like there's no way it was gonna even come close to it. But that's the 1990s. Definitely a longer episode.
We're
still 2 hours, and there were still so many films we didn't talk about. And I'm sure you guys are going to let us know in the comments below, outside of what we talked about, what 90s action films did you feel that we left off the list? Trust me, this was hard. This was very, very hard to come up with just the list that we had. And there's still probably about 20 movies that we did not mention that probably deserved to be talked about in the 1990s. But we march on and we go to the 2000s, where once again, like we said earlier, everyone at the start of 2000s was trying to do the same shit that the 80s and 90s did, and it just didn't work anymore, and they had to reinvent themselves, and when they did, it worked incredibly well. And that'll be next week's episode. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, I'm going to follow some of the social media outlets you see below. And we'll be back next week for Decades of Action, the 2000s. I'm Sean Waskrew. That is Brian Michaels. And until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch some movies, go have some fun.